So New York developers and landlords are scrambling to support a mayoral candidate who can counter self-described Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani after his shocking primary win last week. So Mamdani's policies include a rent freeze on roughly 1 million rent-stabilized city apartments and building 200,000 publicly subsidized affordable housing units. Mamdani's website acknowledges the $100 billion price tag over the next decade while proposing steeper taxes on millionaires and corporations to fund it. Well, wealthy New Yorkers are now looking at backup plans should Mamdani clinch the mayorship. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he weighed in. Here's what he wrote on X just when you thought Palm Beach real estate couldn't go any higher. Let's bring in the Peebles Corporation founder, chairman, and CEO Don Peebles, who luckily I've known you, sir, for almost 20 years, and you've always called New York and Florida your home. I can't tell you right now how many real estate people are reaching out to me in Florida saying, here we go again.
Well, it looks like de Blasio all over again. 2013, there was a big panic in what was going to happen in New York City when a progressive mayor was elected through the Democratic nominating process. And ultimately, de Blasio's 8 years moved New York City back, but it didn't end up in a catastrophic event. But there was a lot of shifting in terms of businesses and entrepreneurs down to South Florida, and then it was accelerated by the pandemic. I think this time around, we're going to see a bit of the same, but the ambitious plans of Mamdani, who has not yet clinched the Democratic nomination yet, and they're still counting votes. So, but ultimately, I think he will, and then there'll be a robust general election, unlike in 2013.
Well, you know, we had former Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCoy with us yesterday, and she and many others in the city are forming these coalitions, whether it is with Jewish groups or it's with business people, corporate types, or in particular with real estate groups, because they know that you've already got these buildings in New York City that have value issues because of empty office space, for example. This kind of leads me into what we're seeing happen in the city, and we saw this in the pandemic. The Journal's got out this new piece, and it's called Turning New York Offices into Homes Finally Works. Now there's a rent freeze catch. The writer points out Zohran Mamdani's policies could hurt a promising source of new housing supply. So, Don, we've been doing these stories where we've seen them taking these large office buildings in Manhattan, and they are converting them into residential, into residential apartments. But they've got to have some subsidized housing, you know, that rent-stabilized housing. His policies, the Journal points out, would quash all of that. It would stop it all in its tracks.
Yeah, we've launched a fund actually to convert commercial office buildings into residential use and other alternative uses from Boston all the way down to Atlanta, and then of course on the West Coast. New York still is a challenge, whether it was Mamdani or whether it is Eric Adams or could have been Como. The challenge is that the cost consequences to convert these buildings is still significant, but additional headwinds, you know, from an administration that's going to increase taxes in the places that they can do it, which are going to be targeting commercial real estate taxes, I believe, are going to be one of the sources. That's going to slow things down. But what New York is short of is 500,000 affordable houses. And it's also short another 500,000 of workforce housing. Those two things are the biggest drivers of what is creating this housing crunch. And so it's short about 1 million units. And the only way that gets done is a much more comprehensive tax abatement and tax incentive and financial incentive effort by the state of New York. And the mayor of New York has very little to do with tax policy overall. That is dealt with at the state. And Governor Hochul has said any kind of tax increase right now is dead on arrival as far as she's concerned. So I think there's going to be a challenge in terms of raising taxes, which is good for businesses and high-income earners, but also it's going to hurt the ability to convert these buildings and build the housing that New York really needs.
Well, and I think that is becoming more and more clear to the residents of New York York and people across the nation that are watching this play out thinking, wow, the Democrats are really going the other direction with the progressive stance here, because a lot of the things that he's promising, he actually can't deliver. He legally cannot do half the things that he's promising. I mean, I heard somebody yesterday on local news call him Santa Claus. But I want you to listen to this. Maria sat down with President Trump on Sunday Morning Futures, and she brought up this issue about what's happening in the city. I want you to watch his answer to her.
What did you make of the New York Democrat primary? Mamdani.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get in. It's inconceivable that but he's a communist, and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it, but I can't imagine it. But let's say this. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing. It's shocking that I would have assumed that I used to say we will never have a socialist in this country. No, but we'll have a communist. I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York. So I was very surprised when I said, I never heard of him.
This is President Trump, a New Yorker. Don, your reaction?
Well, look, I'm in agreement with him. I am shocked that the epicenter of capitalism in the largest democracy on the planet and the most powerful nation on the planet has elected a socialist in the Democratic primary. But this is, again, a part of the shift that is happening right now. Is this far left wing of the Democratic Party is pushing out moderates and centrist Democrats, and they're moving to Republicans. That is why President Trump won all the swing states. But the problem is that the Democratic leadership in many of these centers, like New York City, has been sitting on its butt because they haven't had to really do anything. They could take it for granted. But now the party's been hijacked by the left wing, and everyone's been caught flat-footed. I'm astonished at the lack of leadership in the real estate industry in New York City overall. I sounded the alarm when Bill de Blasio was running against Bill Thompson and Christine Quinn, saying that we needed to consolidate our support behind Thompson so he could win. Here, the Democratic Party never took Mamdani or anyone else seriously because they felt Andrew Cuomo was inevitable because of his success as governor for 3 terms and pro-business approach. Now they're scrambling. And look, I think there's going to be a robust general election.
Yeah. I think you're right. And the question now is can the business community coalesce around one formidable opponent to Zohran Mamdani so that businesses aren't ruined in the city? Real quick before you go, I do want to ask you about this affordability crisis that's happening in California. Demand is now collapsing in some of these residential neighborhoods. Price is down a little bit, but now inventory is piling up. And even on the commercial side, business owners are pushing back against the policies from the Democrats there. They're saying are pushing them out of the state of California. Your reaction, Don?
Yeah, look, California, and especially Southern California, is the most difficult place to do business in the United States. We were trying to build a $1.6 billion development in downtown LA and stuck with it during the COVID crisis, and yet we could get no support from the government. In fact, policies that were hurting businesses. But what's amazing to me is the reason why they're not as supply constrained right now isn't because they've added a single unit. It's because people are fleeing. They have given up and they're going to other places. And that's going to continue to happen. And even when you had an entire neighborhood burned down while the government was watching, nothing was done, and now people are leaving. So I think the challenge with Los Angeles and Southern California is that it's got to hit rock bottom before change takes place, like San Francisco. And I think Southern California is a ways off, so we're going to see more of an exodus out of California because the quality of life is diminished as well.
Don Peebles, it is always so great to speak to you about, well, one of my favorite topics, and that is real estate. Wow, what an incredible turn we're seeing across the country here. Sir, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure your phone's been ringing off the hook. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right.